Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. Today, I'm going to explain and review a new release drama story called Thor's Forgotten Brother, Rise of the Outcast. This is a powerful fantasy story about a young man named Andy, who is treated like the weakest person in his entire training group and eventually gets dismissed because everyone believes he has no real potential. But what nobody knows is that Andy is hiding a terrifying secret. The weakness everyone sees is only a mask, because deep inside him is a power strong enough to challenge the gods themselves. Even more shocking, Andy's true strength is greater than that of the secret brothers who trained him under Odin's orders. And when Andy receives the indestructible Hercules wrist guards, the mystery surrounding his identity begins to unravel. What follows is a story filled with hidden power, divine bloodlines, secret training, betrayal, and a shocking transformation that changes Andy's destiny forever. So make sure you stay with me until the end, because this story is about to reveal why the person everyone called an outcast may actually be the most powerful of them all. Now, without wasting any more time, let's begin the story. The story begins with Andy standing inside a massive training ground surrounded by warriors, instructors, and other young fighters. The atmosphere is tense because today is an important day for everyone in the training camp. Each trainee has been working for a long time to prove their strength, discipline, and ability to survive difficult challenges. For most of them, training is a chance to earn respect and establish their place among powerful warriors. But for Andy, the same training ground has always felt like a place where he is constantly judged and humiliated. Andy stands quietly among the other trainees, trying not to attract attention. He knows that people already have a certain opinion about him. They see him as weak, slow, and incapable of reaching the level expected from a serious warrior. Whenever the others demonstrate their abilities, Andy deliberately holds himself back. He never shows what he can truly do, and because of that, everyone believes the rumors about him are true. The instructor eventually calls Andy forward for another assessment. Everyone immediately begins watching him, expecting another disappointing performance. Andy steps into the training area without arguing. His face remains calm, but inside, he knows exactly what is happening. He could easily demonstrate a level of strength that would shock everyone around him, but he has been taught to keep his true abilities hidden. The test begins, and Andy performs far below what he is actually capable of. He struggles with the exercises, moves slowly, and allows himself to appear exhausted. The other trainees begin whispering among themselves. Some laugh, while others shake their heads in disappointment. To them, Andy is simply someone who does not belong among powerful warriors. The instructor becomes increasingly frustrated. After watching Andy fail to meet even the basic expectations, he finally tells him that there is no reason for him to continue training. Andy is dismissed from the program. For a moment, the entire training ground becomes silent. Andy looks at the instructor, but he does not beg for another opportunity. He does not reveal his real strength. Instead, he simply accepts the decision with a quiet expression. The people around him interpret his silence as proof that he has nothing to offer. Nobody realizes that Andy is deliberately allowing them to believe he is powerless. As Andy walks away from the training ground, the disappointment around him follows him like a shadow. The people who once trained beside him look at him as if he has already failed in life. But Andy knows something they do not. His story was never supposed to end there. Long before this moment, Andy had been connected to a secret that almost nobody knew about. He had been trained in ways that ordinary warriors could never imagine. His secret brothers had helped prepare him under the orders of Odin, a powerful figure whose plans reached far beyond the ordinary world. These brothers were not weak themselves. They possessed extraordinary abilities and had been trained to understand powers that were connected to the gods. Andy, however, had always been different. The strange part was that even his secret brothers did not fully understand just how powerful Andy could become. They had seen his potential, but Andy's true strength was buried beneath layers of restraint and secrecy. There was something inside him that did not behave like ordinary human power. His abilities were connected to a much deeper origin, one that would eventually force everyone to question everything they believed about him. As Andy leaves the training grounds, he reaches a quiet location where nobody can see him. For the first time that day, the expression on his face changes. The humiliation disappears, replaced by a calm confidence. He knows that being dismissed may actually be the beginning of something much bigger. Meanwhile, the people at the training camp continue discussing Andy. Some believe he was never talented. Others think he simply wasted an opportunity. None of them consider the possibility that Andy allowed himself to fail. But there is another reason Andy has been hiding his abilities. He has been waiting. Waiting for the right moment. Waiting for the truth about his origins to emerge. And that moment begins to arrive when an extraordinary artifact connected to his destiny comes into his possession. The artifact is known as the Hercules wrist guards. Unlike ordinary weapons or armor, these wrist guards are said to be indestructible. Their true purpose has remained hidden for a long time, and only someone with the right power can awaken their full potential. When Andy finally receives them, something unexpected happens. The moment he comes into contact with the wrist guards, he feels an enormous force moving through his body. It is not ordinary strength. It feels ancient, overwhelming, and strangely familiar. Andy looks down at his wrists as the mysterious power begins responding to him. For the first time, he realizes that the strange abilities he has been hiding may not simply be the result of training. There may be something in his blood. Something divine. And if that is true, then being called weak may have been the greatest misunderstanding of his entire life. Andy has spent years allowing people to underestimate him, but the moment is approaching when he will no longer be able to hide the truth. His connection to Odin, his secret brothers, the mysterious Hercules wrist guards, and his forgotten divine lineage are all pieces of the same puzzle. And once those pieces begin coming together, the people who rejected Andy will realize that they made a terrible mistake. Because the man they dismissed as the weakest trainee may be carrying a power capable of standing against the gods themselves. And this is only the beginning of Andy's rise. After Andy leaves the training grounds, he continues walking until the noise of the camp disappears behind him. The strange sensation from the Hercules wrist guards is still spreading through his arms. He stops beneath an ancient tree and looks carefully at the guards wrapped around his wrists. They appear simple at first, but there is something unnatural about them. They do not feel heavy, yet Andy can sense an enormous force sleeping inside them. He tries to remove one of the guards, but the moment his fingers touch it, a powerful energy surges through his body and forces him to step back. Andy realizes that these wrist guards have recognized him. That thought unsettles him because he knows the artifact was never meant for an ordinary warrior. The Hercules wrist guards were created for someone capable of carrying extraordinary power, and Andy has no idea why they have chosen him. For years, he has been told that he is weak. He has been treated like someone who could never become a true warrior. Yet now, an ancient divine artifact is responding to him as if it has been waiting for his arrival. Before Andy can understand what is happening, he hears footsteps behind him. He turns around and sees one of his secret brothers approaching. Unlike the trainees at the camp, this brother knows that Andy is not what everyone thinks he is. He has watched Andy train in secret and understands that Andy has always been hiding something. But even he does not know the complete truth about Andy's origins. The brother looks at the wrist guards and immediately becomes serious. He asks Andy where he got them. Andy explains that they were given to him after his dismissal, but he still does not understand why they are reacting to him. His brother tells him that he should be careful. The Hercules wrist guards are not ordinary equipment. Their history is connected to ancient powers, and anyone who wears them without the necessary strength could be destroyed by the energy inside them. Andy calmly replies that he does not feel threatened by them. In fact, he feels stronger. His brother studies him for a moment and realizes something has changed. Andy's presence feels different. His eyes have become sharper, and the energy around him is almost impossible to ignore. The brother remembers the orders he once received from Odin. He was told that Andy had to be trained, protected, and kept away from certain enemies until the right time arrived. But nobody had ever explained why. That question has followed Andy's brothers for years. Why was Andy so important? Why did Odin personally order them to train him? And why had Andy been forced to hide his abilities from everyone? The brother decides that Andy deserves some answers, but before he can reveal everything, they are interrupted by another message from the training camp. The instructor has discovered that Andy's dismissal has caused an unexpected problem. During the final assessment, the training equipment recorded an unusual energy reading around Andy. At first, everyone assumed it was a malfunction, but the reading was too powerful to ignore. The instructor begins questioning the other trainees. Nobody knows what happened. Andy had appeared weak throughout the entire assessment, yet the equipment had briefly detected a force far beyond anything an ordinary trainee could produce. The instructor becomes suspicious. Meanwhile, Andy and his brother return to a hidden location where the secret brothers used to train. The place is far from the ordinary training grounds, concealed behind ancient stone structures and surrounded by strange symbols. Andy remembers spending years there under the watch of his brothers. He remembers being pushed beyond normal limits, but he also remembers one strange rule. He was never allowed to give everything he had. Whenever Andy came close to revealing his full strength, his brothers ordered him to stop. At the time, Andy thought they were simply being cautious. Now he begins to wonder if they were afraid of what would happen if he fully awakened. His brother finally admits that Odin had warned them about Andy long ago. Odin had told them that Andy's power was unusual and that his destiny was connected to something far greater than the training they were giving him. Andy demands to know what Odin meant. His brother hesitates. Then he says that Andy is not simply a talented warrior. Andy has a bloodline that goes back to an ancient divine power. The revelation leaves Andy speechless. For years, he had believed that his weakness was something he had inherited. He thought perhaps there was something wrong with him, something that prevented him from becoming as strong as his brothers. But now he is being told the opposite. His power was never missing. It was sealed. Andy asks who sealed it and why. His brother does not have the complete answer. He only knows that Andy's true power was hidden because there were forces in the world that would destroy him if they discovered his identity too early. The safest way to protect him was to make everyone believe he was weak. Suddenly, Andy understands why he was always treated differently. The humiliations, the failed tests, the restrictions, the secret training. None of it was random. His entire life had been built around hiding the truth. But Andy still cannot understand why Odin would allow him to be treated like an outcast. His brother explains that Odin believed Andy would eventually need to experience rejection and hardship because his destiny would require more than strength. If Andy became arrogant before understanding his power, the divine energy inside him could consume him. Andy looks down at the Hercules wrist guards. For the first time, he understands why they appeared now. His dismissal from training was not the end of his journey. It was the moment his hidden destiny had been waiting for. But before Andy can process everything, the ancient symbols around the training chamber begin glowing. The ground shakes, and a powerful presence suddenly fills the room. Andy immediately raises his arms. The Hercules wrist guards respond. A massive wave of energy explodes outward, but instead of hurting Andy, the guards absorb the force and become brighter. His brother stares at him in disbelief. He has seen powerful warriors before, but he has never seen the wrist guards respond like this. Then a voice echoes through the chamber. It is an ancient voice, deep and commanding, carrying a power that makes the entire room tremble. The voice calls Andy by a name he has never heard before. Andy freezes. The name sounds strangely familiar, as though some forgotten part of his memory recognizes it. His brother looks terrified. He realizes that the awakening has begun much earlier than expected. The divine bloodline inside Andy is responding to the wrist guards, and whatever has been sleeping inside him for years is finally beginning to awaken. But this awakening also creates a danger. If Andy's power has truly returned, others will soon sense it. And among those who may come searching for him are people who know the truth about his forgotten lineage. People who do not want Andy to discover who he really is. Andy stands in the center of the chamber, surrounded by the growing divine energy. For the first time in his life, he does not feel weak. He feels something far more frightening. He feels unlimited. And somewhere beyond the hidden training grounds, an ancient force awakens as well, sensing that the forgotten air has finally begun to rise. The ancient chamber remains silent after the mysterious voice disappears, but Andy can still feel its presence inside his mind. The name he heard continues to echo through his thoughts. He does not know what it means, yet something about it feels connected to a memory buried deep within him. His brother watches him carefully, clearly disturbed by what has just happened. For years, he had believed that Andy's power was sealed safely, but the reaction of the Hercules wrist guards has changed everything. Andy asks his brother who called him by that strange name. His brother admits that he does not know the full answer. He only knows that Odin once warned the secret brothers never to reveal certain details about Andy's birth until the proper time. According to Odin, Andy's identity was tied to an ancient divine bloodline, and revealing that identity too early could attract enemies powerful enough to destroy entire kingdoms. Andy is frustrated. He has spent his entire life being kept in the dark, and now every answer seems to create even more questions. He wants to know who his parents were, why his power was sealed, and why Odin cared enough to order his brothers to protect him. Most importantly, he wants to know why everyone was allowed to believe he was weak. His brother finally explains that Andy's apparent weakness was part of his protection. If enemies discovered that a divine heir was growing stronger, they would immediately search for him. By making Andy appear powerless, Odin hoped to keep him invisible until he was mature enough to control his abilities. Andy is not completely satisfied with the explanation, but he begins to understand the sacrifice behind it. His brothers had never truly considered him weak. In fact, they had always trained him differently because they knew his potential was extraordinary. Their harsh lessons, secret exercises, and constant warnings had all been designed to prepare him for something they could not yet explain. The next morning, Andy returns near the training camp. He does not enter the main grounds, but watches from a distance. The same people who mocked him the previous day are still talking about his dismissal. Some trainees laugh about how easily he failed. Others say the camp will be better without him. Andy listens silently. For the first time, their words no longer hurt. He knows something they do not. The person they laughed at is changing. Inside the camp, however, the instructor has become increasingly suspicious. The strange energy reading from Andy's final assessment has not disappeared from the records. The instructor orders the equipment to be checked, but every test confirms the same thing. For a brief moment during Andy's assessment, an immense source of power had appeared. The instructor begins to wonder whether Andy deliberately hid his abilities. One of the senior trainees suggests that Andy may have cheated, but the instructor rejects the idea. Whatever happened was beyond ordinary tricks. Someone or something had interfered with the training system, and the instructor wants to know why. The investigation eventually reaches a powerful authority connected to the training organization. When the report is presented, the reaction is immediate. The mysterious energy signature matches an ancient power that was believed to have disappeared generations ago. This information creates panic. If the signature truly belongs to the ancient divine bloodline, then Andy is not simply an outcast. He may be the missing heir everyone thought was gone forever. Meanwhile, Andy begins experimenting with the Hercules wrist guards under his brother's supervision. At first, the brother tells him to use only a tiny amount of energy. Andy places his hand against a massive stone training pillar and pushes gently. The pillar cracks. Andy immediately stops. His brother stares at the damage. Andy is surprised because he barely used any force. He tries again, but this time he concentrates on controlling his energy rather than increasing it. The wrist guard responds to his thoughts. The strange symbols on its surface glow, and the power flowing through Andy becomes smoother. His brother realizes that Andy is learning unusually quickly. He reminds Andy that raw strength is not enough. If he cannot control his power, he could hurt innocent people or destroy everything around him. Andy understands the warning and begins practicing restraint. As the training continues, memories begin returning to him. He remembers being younger and standing in the same hidden chamber. He remembers hearing a powerful voice telling his brothers that Andy must never discover his true identity until he was ready. He also remembers another figure standing nearby, someone whose face remains hidden in his memory. Andy becomes convinced that this forgotten person knows the truth about his birth. But before he can investigate further, the chamber suddenly shakes. A dark energy enters the area. His brother immediately tells Andy to prepare himself. Someone has found them. Several mysterious warriors appear outside the hidden chamber. They are not ordinary soldiers. Their armor carries symbols associated with an ancient enemy that Andy's brothers were warned about years ago. The leader steps forward and demands that Andy be handed over. Andy asks why they want him. The leader smiles and says they are not interested in the weak trainee everyone knows. They have come for the person hidden behind that identity. Andy realizes they know the truth. His brother steps between Andy and the enemy. The attackers move forward. A fierce battle begins. Andy initially refuses to fight because his brother tells him to stay back. But when one of the attackers manages to overpower his brother, Andy instinctively raises his arm. The Hercules wrist guard flashes. A powerful shockwave sends the attacker flying across the chamber. Everyone freezes. Andy himself is stunned. He had not even intended to attack. The leader of the enemy group looks at Andy with fear rather than confidence. Now they know for certain. The divine heir has awakened. The battle becomes more intense. Andy's brother tries to hold back the attackers, but their numbers are overwhelming. Andy realizes that hiding his strength is no longer an option. He focuses on the energy inside the wrist guards and learns to direct it without losing control. One by one, the attackers are forced backward. Andy does not fight with anger. Instead, he moves with surprising calmness, protecting his brother and refusing to use more power than necessary. The enemy leader finally retreats, but before leaving, he delivers a warning. He tells Andy that his awakening has been noticed by forces far greater than the people who attacked him today. Soon, the gods themselves will know that he has returned. Andy watches them disappear. His brother looks at him and realizes that everything has changed. The secret can no longer remain hidden. Andy is no longer simply the dismissed trainee from the training camp. He is now a target. And somewhere far away, powerful figures begin receiving reports about a mysterious young man wearing the indestructible Hercules wrist guards. The name Andy is beginning to spread. But the people searching for him do not yet understand the most frightening truth. Andy has only awakened the first layer of his power. His true divine strength is still waiting to be unlocked. After the attackers disappear into the distance, Andy and his brother remain inside the hidden chamber, both realizing that the situation has changed completely. The secret that had protected Andy for years is now exposed to dangerous forces. His brother looks at the damaged entrance and understands that more enemies will come. The first group had not been strong enough to defeat Andy, but their real purpose was never to win the battle. They wanted to confirm whether the divine heir had truly awakened. Andy asks his brother what they are supposed to do now. For the first time, his brother does not have an easy answer. He tells Andy that they must leave immediately and find the other secret brothers. If Odin's enemies have discovered Andy, staying in one place will only make him an easier target. Andy agrees, but before leaving, he looks at the ancient symbols covering the walls. The mysterious voice from the previous night is still bothering him. He wants to know why the voice called him by another name and why the Hercules wrist guards reacted so strongly to him. His brother tells him that those questions will have to wait. There is something more important. Andy needs to learn how to control his power before the next battle. They begin traveling toward another hidden training site. Along the way, Andy notices something unusual. His senses have become sharper. He can hear distant sounds, feel changes in the air, and detect the presence of other people before they appear. The wrist guards seem to have awakened more than just his physical strength. They are changing the way he experiences the world. Andy asks if this is part of his divine bloodline. His brother says yes, but admits that even he does not know the full limits of Andy's abilities. That answer surprises Andy. His brothers had always seemed to know everything about him. Now Andy realizes they were following instructions from Odin without understanding the entire reason behind them. When they finally reach the second training site, another secret brother is already waiting. This brother is more serious and reserved than the others. He immediately notices the energy surrounding Andy and realizes that the awakening has progressed further than expected. He tells Andy that the Hercules wrist guards were never supposed to awaken so quickly. Andy asks why. The brother explains that the wrist guards were created to respond to divine energy. They can survive almost any force, but they also amplify the strength of the person wearing them. If the wearer lacks control, the artifact can become dangerous. But in Andy's case, something strange is happening. The wrist guards are not merely amplifying Andy's power. They appear to be recognizing it. This revelation leaves everyone concerned. The second brother then begins testing Andy's abilities. He starts with simple physical exercises, but Andy completes them almost effortlessly. The brother increases the difficulty, expecting Andy to struggle eventually. Instead, Andy continues adapting. Finally, the brother tells Andy to strike an enormous reinforced stone wall. Andy hesitates. He remembers what happened before and does not want to destroy anything unnecessarily. His brother tells him to use only a small amount of strength. Andy strikes the wall. The entire structure trembles. A deep crack spreads across the stone. The brothers exchange worried looks. Andy immediately steps backward. He had used only a fraction of his strength. The second brother tells him that this confirms their fear. Andy's physical strength has already surpassed the level they expected. But strength alone is not the most dangerous part. His divine energy is growing. As Andy continues training, the brothers begin explaining more about his history. They tell him that Odin had once gathered them and given them a single mission: protect Andy until the right time. They were not supposed to reveal his identity, and they were forbidden from allowing him to fully awaken before he was ready. Andy asks what happened before he came under their protection. The brothers remain silent. Andy becomes frustrated and demands an answer. Finally, one of them tells him that Andy's childhood was connected to a conflict involving powerful divine forces. Something happened that caused his true identity to disappear from history. After that event, Andy was hidden away and raised without knowing his real origin. The brothers do not know every detail, but they know one thing: Andy was not abandoned. He was hidden. The difference is important. Andy has spent years believing that nobody valued him. Now he realizes that people had actually risked everything to protect him. But he still has one major question. Where is Odin now? The brothers explain that Odin has been absent for a long time. Before disappearing, he gave them instructions that would only make sense when Andy's power began to awaken. Andy realizes that the moment has arrived. Odin expected this. The brothers lead Andy deeper into the training site, where they reveal an ancient chamber containing a massive sealed door. Symbols are carved across its surface, and at the center is a mark that looks almost identical to the design on Andy's wrist guards. Andy approaches the door. The moment he gets close, the Hercules wrist guards begin glowing. The door reacts. A powerful vibration spreads through the chamber. The brothers step back. Andy places his hand against the seal. The door opens. Behind it is an ancient room filled with records, weapons, and symbols connected to divine history. At the center stands a large stone tablet containing a figure whose appearance resembles Andy. Andy stares at the image in disbelief. His brothers have no words. The tablet confirms that Andy's bloodline is not ordinary. He is part of an ancient divine lineage that was believed to have vanished. But there is something even more shocking written beneath the image. The inscription describes Andy not merely as an heir, but as someone whose power could eventually surpass the other divine warriors. That means Andy's strength is not an accident. He was born with the potential to become something greater than the warriors who trained him. The brothers finally understand why Odin was so careful. If the wrong people discovered this truth, they would never allow Andy to grow stronger. Before Andy can read the rest of the inscription, the entire chamber suddenly shakes. A powerful voice echoes from somewhere beyond the sealed room. This time, the voice is not mysterious. It sounds like someone calling Andy directly. The brothers recognize the voice immediately. It is Odin. Andy freezes. After years of silence, Odin has finally returned. But instead of appearing in person, Odin warns them that the enemies hunting Andy are only the beginning. A much greater conflict is approaching, and Andy's awakening has already changed the balance of power. Odin tells Andy that the time has come for him to learn the truth about his birth. But there is a price. To unlock the next stage of his divine power, Andy must first face a trial designed specifically for him. The brothers look at Andy with concern. They know what this means. The trial is not a normal training exercise. It is something that could either awaken Andy's full potential or destroy the power he has spent his entire life protecting. Andy looks down at the Hercules wrist guards. For the first time, he is no longer afraid of the truth. He accepts the challenge. Whatever happened in his forgotten past, Andy is determined to uncover it. And now, with Odin finally speaking again, the mystery surrounding his divine lineage is about to become much more dangerous. The moment Odin's voice fades from the ancient chamber, Andy remains standing in front of the stone tablet. He keeps staring at the figure carved into it, trying to understand how someone from a forgotten divine bloodline could look so much like him. For years, Andy had believed his life was ordinary, even if his training had always been strange. Now he realizes that almost every important event in his life was connected to a secret that had been hidden from him. His brothers tell him that Odin's trial is the only way to unlock the next layer of his power. Andy asks what will happen if he fails. One of the brothers hesitates before admitting that the trial will force Andy to confront the deepest part of his own energy. If he loses control, the power inside him could overwhelm his body and mind. If he succeeds, however, he will finally understand what his divine bloodline is capable of. Andy does not hesitate for long. After being treated as weak for so many years, he refuses to turn away now that the truth is finally within reach. The brothers lead him into a circular chamber beneath the ancient ruins. In the center is a platform surrounded by glowing symbols. The moment Andy steps onto it, the Hercules wrist guards become extremely heavy. For the first time since receiving them, Andy feels their full weight. His brother warns him not to fight against the pressure. The trial is designed to measure his control, not simply his strength. Andy closes his eyes and takes a deep breath. The pressure increases. His arms begin to tremble, and the energy inside his body starts moving uncontrollably. Images suddenly flash through his mind. He sees himself as a child. He sees unfamiliar warriors surrounding him. He sees his brothers standing nearby. And then he sees Odin. But Odin is not alone. A powerful figure stands beside him, holding a small child who looks exactly like Andy. Andy tries to understand what he is seeing, but the vision disappears before he can learn more. The pressure becomes stronger. Andy falls to one knee. His brothers shout for him to remain calm. Andy remembers every moment when people called him weak. He remembers being laughed at, dismissed, and ignored. He remembers wondering why he could never be like his brothers. For years, those memories made him feel powerless. But now he realizes something. His weakness was never the truth. It was the story people were allowed to believe. Andy slowly stands again. Instead of fighting the energy, he accepts it. The symbols around the platform begin glowing brighter. The Hercules wrist guards respond immediately. A wave of divine energy spreads through the chamber, but this time Andy controls it. The pressure disappears, replaced by a strange sense of peace. The trial changes. Andy is transported into a vast vision of an ancient battlefield. He sees warriors fighting beneath a dark sky. Massive structures are collapsing in the distance, and powerful beings are clashing with forces that seem almost impossible to defeat. At the center of the battlefield stands Odin. Andy watches as Odin protects a young child. The child is Andy. The vision finally gives him the first real clue about his past. Andy was not hidden because he was weak. He was hidden because someone was trying to protect him from a war that had already destroyed much of his divine family. Odin had taken responsibility for keeping Andy alive. But the vision also reveals something else. Andy was separated from another child. Someone who was connected to him by blood. Before Andy can see the person's face clearly, the vision changes again. He sees his secret brothers receiving orders from Odin. Protect Andy. Train him. Never reveal his true identity. Never allow him to awaken too early. The brothers obeyed those orders for years. Andy finally understands why they treated him so differently. They were never ashamed of him. They were afraid for him. The vision begins fading, but one final image appears. A powerful symbol shines above Andy. It resembles the mark on his wrist guards. A voice tells him that his bloodline carries a power capable of surpassing the ancient divine warriors. Andy opens his eyes. He is back inside the chamber. His brothers are standing around him. The trial is over. But something about Andy has changed. His presence feels completely different. The energy around him is calm, yet immense. One of his brothers tries to measure his power, but the device immediately breaks. Everyone is stunned. Andy asks what happened. His brother says that the measuring system cannot calculate his strength anymore. Andy has already gone beyond its limit. The brothers realize that Andy's power is developing faster than anyone predicted. But there is little time to celebrate. A warning signal suddenly activates inside the ruins. Someone has entered the outer defenses. The enemies have found them again. This time, the attackers are stronger. Andy and his brothers prepare themselves. The enemy forces surround the ruins, led by a warrior who knows exactly who Andy is. Unlike the previous attackers, this leader does not call him a weak trainee. He calls him the forgotten heir. Andy realizes that the secret is spreading rapidly. The enemy leader demands that Andy surrender the Hercules wrist guards. He claims that the wrist guards belong to an ancient power that should never have returned. Andy refuses. The enemy attacks. The battle is far more intense than the previous encounter. Andy's brothers fight together, using their combined training to hold back the enemy warriors. But the attackers are prepared for them. One of Andy's brothers is knocked down. Another is surrounded. Andy watches as his family struggles. For years, his brothers had protected him. Now he has the chance to protect them. Andy steps forward. His brother warns him not to lose control. Andy answers calmly that he finally understands the difference between power and control. The Hercules' wrist guards glow. Andy releases a controlled burst of energy. The force spreads across the battlefield and knocks back the enemy without destroying the surrounding structures. The attackers are shocked. Andy moves forward with confidence. For the first time, he is no longer hiding. His movements are faster than before, his strength greater than anything his brothers have witnessed, and his ability to control the divine energy continues improving with every moment. The enemy leader realizes that Andy is already stronger than the records predicted. But instead of retreating, he smiles. He tells Andy that this battle was never meant to defeat him. It was meant to awaken him completely. Then the enemy leader reveals that someone far more powerful has already learned about Andy's return. Someone who knows the truth about his divine family. Someone who has been waiting for the forgotten heir to reveal himself. Andy becomes serious. He asks who it is. The enemy leader refuses to answer. Instead, he disappears with the remaining warriors, leaving behind a final warning. Andy stands among the ruins, surrounded by his brothers. He has survived the battle, but he knows the real conflict is only beginning. Odin's trial has awakened a greater portion of his power. The Hercules' wrist guards have accepted him. His divine lineage is no longer just a mystery. And somewhere beyond the horizon, an enemy who understands Andy's forgotten past is preparing for the moment when they finally meet. Andy looks at his brothers and realizes that he can no longer run from his destiny. He has spent his entire life being the outcast. Now he must discover why the gods themselves were afraid of what he could become. After the battle at the ancient ruins, Andy and his brothers know they cannot stay there any longer. The enemy had managed to locate them twice, and each attack had revealed more about how much information their opponents already possessed. Andy had finally awakened a significant part of his divine power, but that awakening had also made him impossible to hide. The longer he remained in one place, the more dangerous the situation became for everyone around him. One of Andy's brothers examines the damaged ruins and tells him that they need to find Odin before the enemy does. Andy agrees, but he is still thinking about the final warning from the enemy leader. Someone out there knows about his forgotten family. Someone has been waiting for him to awaken. Andy wants answers, and he knows that Odin is the only person who can explain the entire truth. The brothers begin their journey toward an ancient sanctuary hidden beyond the northern mountains. According to the old records, Odin once used the sanctuary as a place to communicate with divine forces. It is also believed to contain information about the bloodline Andy belongs to. As they travel, Andy notices that his body is changing. His strength continues increasing even though he is no longer actively training. The Hercules' wrist guards seem to draw energy from the environment and convert it into power that Andy can control. But the brothers warn him that this ability comes with a risk. The more Andy awakens his divine power, the more his enemies will be able to sense him. Andy understands the danger, but he refuses to suppress himself again. He has spent too many years pretending to be weak, and now he wants to learn the truth about who he really is. During the journey, the brothers finally tell Andy something they had kept secret even from each other. They reveal that they were not all born into the same family. They were brought together by Odin. Each of them had a different connection to the ancient divine world, but Odin gave them the same responsibility: protect Andy as if he were their own brother. This revelation deeply affects Andy. He had always thought their bond came from blood, but now he realizes that their relationship was built through years of sacrifice and loyalty. They could have abandoned him, yet they stayed. Andy tells them that he no longer sees them as guardians following orders. He sees them as his family. For a brief moment, the tension disappears. But their peaceful journey does not last. As they approach the mountains, the sky suddenly darkens. A powerful energy spreads through the area, and Andy immediately senses that something is wrong. The brothers stop. A massive storm forms above them without warning. Lightning strikes the mountains, but there is no thunder. Andy realizes the storm is not natural. Someone is creating it. From the darkness, a group of powerful warriors appears. Their armor carries the same ancient symbols Andy saw during his vision. But unlike the previous attackers, these warriors do not immediately attack. Their leader steps forward and says that they have come to speak. Andy remains cautious. The leader tells him that the truth about his lineage has been hidden for a reason. He claims that Andy's bloodline is connected to an ancient conflict that once divided powerful divine factions. Andy asks what happened to his family. The leader refuses to answer directly. Instead, he says that Andy's existence was considered a threat because his potential was greater than the other heirs. This explains why so many people wanted him hidden. But Andy is still confused. If his power was so dangerous, why did Odin protect him instead of destroying him? The leader gives him an unexpected answer. Odin believed Andy could become either the greatest protector of the divine world or its greatest threat. Andy rejects the idea that his destiny has already been decided. He tells the leader that power does not determine who someone becomes. Choices do. The leader seems impressed by the answer, but he warns Andy that others will not be as patient. Before leaving, he tells Andy that the person behind the attacks is not simply trying to kill him. They want to control him. The warriors disappear into the storm. Andy turns to his brothers. He realizes that the enemy could have attacked them, but chose not to. That means they were delivering a message. The sanctuary is closer now. When Andy and his brothers finally reach it, they discover that the entrance is already open. Inside, they find ancient statues representing several divine warriors. One statue is different. It depicts a young warrior wearing wrist guards identical to Andy's. Andy approaches it. The statue suddenly activates. A hidden chamber opens behind it, revealing a collection of ancient records. Among those records is a sealed document bearing Odin's symbol. Andy opens it. The document contains the truth Odin wanted him to discover only after his power awakened. Andy reads that his bloodline was once connected to a powerful divine family, but that family was attacked because of a prophecy. The prophecy stated that one child would eventually be born with the potential to surpass every known divine warrior. That child was Andy. But there is a second part of the prophecy. It says Andy's power would only reach its full potential if he learned to balance his divine strength with his human heart. That is why Odin ordered his brothers to train him without revealing the truth. Andy was not supposed to become obsessed with being powerful. He was supposed to become someone capable of carrying power without being controlled by it. Andy realizes that his years of rejection may have unknowingly prepared him for exactly that challenge. He had learned what it felt like to be powerless. He had experienced humiliation. He had known loneliness. And because of those experiences, he understands the value of protecting people who are weaker than himself. The document ends with a final message from Odin. Andy reads it carefully. Odin tells him that if he has reached this point, then the time has come for them to meet. But before Andy can celebrate, the sanctuary begins shaking. The walls crack. A massive energy appears outside. Andy looks toward the entrance and immediately recognizes the feeling. It is the same energy from his childhood vision. The enemy has arrived. This time, they are not sending ordinary warriors. A single figure walks through the entrance. Andy looks at the stranger and suddenly experiences another memory. He sees the battlefield. He sees Odin. He sees himself as a child. And standing beside the enemy is the person whose face he could never remember. The stranger looks directly at Andy and speaks one sentence. He says that Andy has finally returned to the family that was waiting for him. Andy's expression changes. The mystery surrounding his forgotten past is finally becoming personal. The stranger is not simply an enemy. He is connected to Andy's bloodline. And if his words are true, then the greatest secret about Andy's identity has not even been revealed yet. The stranger's words leave Andy completely still. For the first time since his awakening began, he feels something more powerful than anger or fear. He feels recognition. He has never seen this man in his conscious memories, yet something deep inside him reacts to the stranger's presence as if they have met before. The same feeling had appeared during Odin's trial when Andy saw the forgotten figure standing beside him as a child. One of Andy's brothers immediately steps forward and orders the stranger to identify himself. The man simply smiles and tells them that they have spent years protecting Andy without knowing the entire truth. He says that Odin hid the most important part of Andy's history from everyone, including the secret brothers. Andy demands answers. The stranger finally introduces himself as someone connected to Andy's original divine family. He explains that Andy was not the only child involved in the ancient conflict. There were others who shared the same bloodline, but most of them disappeared when the family was attacked. Andy asks whether this man was there on the night he was separated from his family. The stranger confirms it. He tells Andy that he remembers the night clearly. Andy was still a child, and the forces surrounding the family were too powerful to defeat directly. Odin arrived to protect him and eventually took Andy away from the battlefield. But in the chaos, Andy was separated from the rest of his bloodline. Andy's emotions begin to rise. All his life, he had wondered why he was different. Now someone is standing in front of him claiming to know exactly what happened. But Andy does not immediately trust him. He asks why the stranger attacked his brothers if he truly cares about the family. The stranger responds that he never wanted Andy dead. The attacks were designed to force Andy's power to awaken. Without pressure, Andy might never have discovered his true abilities. Andy becomes angry. He tells the stranger that manipulating someone's life is not the same as protecting them. The stranger admits that Andy has every right to be angry. But then he reveals another secret. The enemy groups that attacked Andy were not working independently. They were being controlled by a powerful faction that fears the return of Andy's divine bloodline. That faction believes Andy's existence could upset the balance of power among the gods. Andy asks who leads them. The stranger says that the answer is connected to Odin himself. Andy is stunned. His brothers immediately become defensive, insisting that Odin protected Andy for years. The stranger does not deny it. Instead, he says that Odin genuinely wanted to protect Andy, but Odin also knew that Andy's power could become dangerous if the wrong forces reached him. The stranger explains that Odin had made a difficult choice. Rather than raising Andy openly as a divine heir, he allowed him to grow up believing he was ordinary. Andy finally understands why his entire life felt like a contradiction. He was surrounded by people who knew he was special, yet everyone treated him as if he were worthless. The stranger tells him that this was intentional. The rejection made Andy stronger emotionally. The secret training made him stronger physically. And the Hercules wrist guards were waiting for the moment when his divine bloodline became mature enough to handle them. Andy looks down at the wrist guards. He now understands that receiving them was not a coincidence. They were part of his destiny. But the stranger has one final revelation. Andy's power does not simply come from an ancient bloodline. His lineage is connected to a forgotten branch of the divine family, a branch that once stood alongside the gods but eventually disappeared from history. Andy asks what happened to that branch. The stranger tells him that the family was betrayed. Someone close to them revealed their location to their enemies. Andy immediately asks who betrayed them. The stranger looks toward the entrance. Before he can answer, a powerful voice echoes through the sanctuary. Odin has arrived. The atmosphere changes instantly. Andy turns around. For the first time, he sees Odin directly. Odin looks older and more tired than Andy imagined, but there is immense power in his presence. His eyes move toward Andy's wrist guards, and for a moment, he says nothing. Andy walks toward him. He asks why Odin hid the truth. Odin admits that he did it because he believed it was the only way to keep Andy alive. Andy asks whether Odin knew the truth about his family. Odin says yes. He knew. He knew who Andy was. He knew where Andy came from. And he knew why enemies were searching for him. Andy asks the question that has been haunting him since his childhood. Why did Odin let him believe he was weak? Odin answers that Andy had to learn something that divine warriors often forget. Power without understanding can destroy everything. Odin wanted Andy to grow up knowing what ordinary life felt like. He wanted him to experience failure, rejection, friendship, and loneliness before gaining access to overwhelming power. Andy listens quietly. He is still hurt, but he begins to understand. Odin then tells Andy that the Hercules wrist guards are only one part of his inheritance. There is another power inside him that has not awakened. The wrist guards are protecting Andy from it. If that final power awakens too quickly, it could overwhelm him. Andy asks what this hidden power is. Odin says it is the true inheritance of his bloodline. It is the reason the ancient prophecy predicted that Andy could surpass the gods. Before Odin can explain further, the sanctuary is attacked. The walls explode inward. The enemy faction has arrived. This time, their leader is far more powerful than anyone Andy has fought before. The stranger immediately recognizes him. He tells Andy that this is the person responsible for hunting his family for years. The enemy leader steps forward and says that Andy should have remained hidden. Andy refuses. The enemy leader attacks. The force of the attack sends Andy crashing across the chamber. For the first time since awakening his power, Andy is unable to stop an opponent with a single move. His brothers rush to help him, but the enemy leader overwhelms them. Odin joins the battle. The sanctuary becomes a battlefield. Andy watches Odin and his brothers fight together, but he realizes that the enemy is still gaining ground. The Hercules' wrist guards begin glowing. Andy hears a faint voice inside his mind. It tells him not to fight with anger. Instead, he must trust the power within him. Andy closes his eyes. He remembers everything. The training, the humiliation, his brothers, Odin, the ancient battlefield, his forgotten family, and all the people who had protected him even when he did not understand why. Andy opens his eyes. The energy surrounding him changes. The wrist guards shine with an intensity unlike anything seen before. The enemy leader stops. For the first time, he looks genuinely afraid. Andy stands slowly. He tells the enemy that he spent his whole life being told he was weak. But now he understands that strength was never about proving himself to others. It was about protecting the people who believed in him. Andy raises his arms. A massive wave of divine energy erupts through the sanctuary. The enemy is forced backward. Everyone watches in disbelief. Odin realizes that Andy has unlocked another layer of his power. But the awakening is not complete. Andy has only opened the door. The final power is still sleeping inside him. And as the sanctuary begins collapsing around them, Odin gives Andy one final warning. The true enemy has not yet revealed itself. The person responsible for Andy's family tragedy is still hidden. And now that Andy has awakened, that person will finally come out of hiding. The sanctuary begins collapsing around Andy and the others as the battle reaches a dangerous turning point. Ancient stones fall from the ceiling, the floor cracks beneath their feet, and the energy released by Andy's awakening continues spreading through the ruins. Odin orders everyone to leave, but Andy refuses to move until his brothers are safe. He has spent his entire life being protected by them, and now he finally understands that his power has a purpose beyond proving himself. Odin looks at Andy and realizes that this is exactly the lesson he wanted him to learn. Andy's greatest strength is not simply the amount of energy inside his body. It is his willingness to use that strength for others. The enemy leader attacks again. This time, Andy does not rush forward blindly. He watches the opponent's movements and waits for the right moment. The Hercules' wrist guards react to his thoughts, creating a protective barrier around him. The attack strikes the barrier and sends a powerful shockwave through the chamber, but Andy remains standing. His brothers are stunned. The enemy leader realizes that Andy's control has improved dramatically. He tells Andy that raw divine power will not be enough to defeat him. He has fought divine warriors for centuries and knows how to exploit their weaknesses. Andy answers that he is not trying to become another divine warrior. He is becoming something different. The enemy attacks again. Andy moves faster than before, avoiding the strike and countering with controlled energy. The battle becomes a contest between experience and potential. The enemy leader has centuries of knowledge, while Andy possesses an overwhelming power that is still developing. For several moments, neither side can gain a decisive advantage. Then the enemy leader reveals another secret. He tells Andy that the person Andy believes to be his forgotten brother is not the only survivor of the ancient bloodline. There is another heir. Someone who has been hidden for even longer than Andy. Andy looks toward the stranger who had revealed his family history. The stranger remains silent. Andy realizes that the stranger knows more than he has admitted. Before Andy can ask anything, the enemy leader uses the distraction to launch another powerful attack. Odin steps in front of Andy. The attack strikes Odin instead. Andy watches in shock as Odin is thrown backward. For the first time, Andy feels genuine fear. He rushes toward Odin and asks whether he is all right. Odin tells him not to worry. But Andy can see that Odin has been injured. The realization changes something inside Andy. He understands that even someone as powerful as Odin cannot protect him forever. If Andy wants to protect the people he cares about, he must stop relying on others to fight his battles. He turns back toward the enemy. The Hercules' wrist guards begin glowing brighter. Andy remembers the words from the ancient prophecy. His power will only reach its full potential when he learns to balance divine strength with his human heart. He finally understands what the prophecy means. His humanity is not a weakness. It is what allows him to control the power that others would use for destruction. Andy takes a deep breath. Instead of forcing the divine energy outward, he draws it inward. The entire chamber becomes silent. The enemy leader looks confused. Then Andy opens his eyes. The energy around him has completely changed. The overwhelming force is now perfectly controlled. Andy moves. In an instant, he crosses the battlefield and strikes the enemy leader with a concentrated burst of power. The attack sends the enemy crashing through several stone pillars. For the first time, the enemy leader cannot immediately stand. Everyone realizes that Andy has reached another level. His power has surpassed what even his brothers thought possible. But Andy does not celebrate. He knows this battle is not over. The enemy leader rises slowly. Instead of attacking again, he laughs. He tells Andy that this is exactly what he wanted. Andy asks what he means. The enemy leader explains that every attack, every confrontation, and every moment of pressure was designed to force Andy's divine power to awaken. Andy realizes that the enemy has been manipulating events from the beginning. The enemy wanted to see how powerful Andy could become. Now that the answer is clear, the enemy leader says he has no reason to continue fighting. He disappears into the darkness. Andy tries to pursue him, but Odin stops him. Odin says chasing him now would be a mistake. Andy demands to know why. Odin explains that the enemy leader was never the true mastermind. He was only testing Andy. The real enemy is still hidden. Andy is frustrated, but he knows Odin is right. The sanctuary continues collapsing. The group finally escapes through an ancient passage just before the entire structure falls behind them. Once they reach safety, Andy looks back at the ruins. Everything he knew has changed. He is no longer simply trying to discover whether he is powerful. He now knows that he is. The real question is why someone has spent so much time trying to awaken him. Odin finally decides to reveal another part of the truth. He tells Andy that the ancient prophecy was misunderstood. Andy was never destined to simply become the strongest warrior. He was destined to become the bridge between the human world and the divine world. His bloodline allows him to exist between both sides. That is why his power is so unusual. He can access divine energy without losing the human emotions that keep him grounded. Andy realizes that this explains why the enemy fears him. If Andy succeeds, the old divisions between powerful divine forces could change forever. But Odin warns him that someone will do anything to prevent that from happening. Andy asks about the other heir mentioned by the enemy. Odin becomes silent. Finally, he admits that the other heir is real. The person has been hidden for years. Andy asks whether this person is a brother or sister. Odin says that the relationship is more complicated than that. When the prophecy revealed that Andy could surpass every known divine warrior, the mastermind became afraid that Andy would prevent their plans. That was why Andy had been hidden. That was why the two heirs were separated. And that was why Andy's powers were sealed. The mastermind believed that if Andy never awakened, the prophecy could never come true. But their plan failed. Andy survived. His brothers protected him. Odin guided him. And the Hercules wrist guards eventually awakened. The mastermind attacks. The force is overwhelming. Even Odin struggles to defend against it. Andy and the other heir fight together, combining their abilities exactly as the ancient prophecy described. Andy provides immense divine strength, while the other heir controls and stabilizes the energy. For the first time, their bloodline functions as one. The mastermind begins losing control. But instead of becoming consumed by anger, Andy remembers everything that brought him to this moment. He remembers being dismissed from training. He remembers everyone calling him weak. He remembers his brothers secretly training him. He remembers Odin's warnings. He remembers the Hercules wrist guards. He remembers discovering his family. And most importantly, he remembers the lesson he learned during the trial. Power means nothing if the person controlling it loses their humanity. Andy refuses to become the kind of ruler his enemy wanted him to be. He does not fight for revenge. He fights to protect. Andy channels his divine energy through the Hercules wrist guards, but instead of releasing it blindly, he combines it with the other heir's control. A massive wave of balanced energy spreads across the temple. The mastermind tries to resist. But the ancient power recognizes Andy and the other heir as the true heirs of the bloodline. The enemy's energy begins collapsing. The mastermind falls to the ground, defeated. The ancient realm becomes silent. The war that began generations ago has finally reached its end. Andy stands quietly, looking at the Hercules wrist guards. Their glow begins fading. For a moment, he wonders whether his power has disappeared. But then he realizes something. The power is still there. It simply no longer needs to control him. Andy has finally mastered it. His brothers approach him. The same brothers who once trained him in secret now look at him with pride. They remember the young Andy who struggled through training and deliberately appeared weak. They realize how far he has come. One of them tells Andy that he has surpassed them. Andy smiles and says that without them, he would never have reached this point. The brothers laugh. Their relationship is no longer based on orders from Odin. It is based on genuine family. The newly discovered heir also approaches Andy. Their relationship is still complicated because years of manipulation cannot disappear overnight. But now they know the truth. They were never enemies. They were separated by someone who feared what they could become together. Andy tells them that they do not have to live according to the past anymore. They can choose their own future. Odin watches them from a distance. Andy finally walks toward him. He tells Odin that he still wishes Odin had trusted him with the truth earlier. Odin admits that perhaps he should have. But he also says that Andy had to discover his own strength instead of simply being told how powerful he was. Andy understands. He does not completely forget the pain of his past, but he no longer allows that pain to define him. The ancient temple begins restoring itself. The divine realm recognizes that the balance has been repaired. Andy looks across the horizon and realizes that his journey has changed him completely. At the beginning of the story, he was the young man everyone dismissed as too weak to continue training. People laughed at him. They underestimated him. They believed he had no future. But they never understood the truth. Andy was never weak. He was simply hiding a power that even the gods could fear. The Hercules wrist guards became the key that awakened his divine bloodline, but they were never the true source of his strength. His real strength came from his choices. He chose to protect instead of destroy. He chose family instead of revenge. He chose understanding instead of hatred. And that is why he became stronger than the warriors who trained him. As Andy and his brothers leave the Forgotten Realm, the world waiting for them is no longer the same. The ancient divine conflict has ended, but Andy knows that his responsibility has only begun. He can no longer hide behind the identity of a weak trainee. The people who once dismissed him may eventually learn the truth. But Andy no longer cares about proving himself to them. He knows who he is now. He is the forgotten heir. He is the brother who was hidden from history. And he is the warrior whose power once rivaled the gods. Yet despite possessing unimaginable strength, Andy chooses to remain grounded. His rise was never truly about becoming the strongest person in the world. It was about discovering why he was given that strength in the first place. As the final scene unfolds, Andy looks toward the distant horizon while the Hercules wrist guards rest quietly around his wrists. His brothers stand beside him, and his newly discovered family member walks with them. The outcast who was once dismissed from training is no longer walking alone. His past has been revealed. His divine lineage has been restored. His brothers are no longer secret guardians. And the power everyone once feared is now under his control. Andy takes one final step forward, ready to face whatever future awaits him. Because the boy everyone called weak has finally become the man he was always destined to be. And this time, nobody can make him forget who he truly is. And that's where this incredible drama story comes to an end. If you enjoyed Andy's journey from being dismissed as the weakest trainee to discovering his true divine power, then please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with your friends and family. Your support really helps the channel grow and motivates me to bring you more exciting drama explanations, emotional stories, and amazing twists. If you enjoyed this story, let me know in the comments what you thought about Andy's hidden power and his final transformation. Thank you so much for watching until the end. Take care, stay connected, and I'll see you in the next amazing drama story.